If your marriage feels stuck, be honest. Have you really tried to change it? I don't mean reading a book or laying in bed at 2 a.m. thinking and worrying about it. I mean really trying something different and then taking a risk that it might not work. If the answer is no, it's not because you're lazy or you're out of ideas. It's probably that you're afraid. Afraid of trying something new and then watching it fail. Because then you might have to face the real possibility that nothing can fix this. So staying stuck begins to feel safer than finding out. Most of the marriage content that you're going to find out there will not tell you this, but the problem in your marriage is probably not what you think it is. It's not your spouse or the patterns or the breakdown in communication or the years of accumulated hurt. Yes, those things are real and they do matter, but there's something much simpler going on and it's a lot harder to admit. Fear. And not just any kind of fear, but a very specific type of fear. The fear that if you actually try, really try with everything you have, real vulnerability, real risk, and it still doesn't work, then what? Well, then you have your answer. And that answer might be the one thing you're most afraid of. So you don't try. Not really, not fully. Instead, you read books and you Google online for therapists in your area, but you don't make the call. And you talk to your spouse occasionally and you make little adjustments in what you're doing that help. And you tell yourself, we're working on it. I know this pattern intimately, not just from the work that I do with couples, but in my own personal life, because for years I compared my first marriage to the couples that were sitting across from me. I would tell myself, well, compared to what they're going through, my marriage isn't so bad. Yeah, we're struggling and I can't say I'm happy, but we're definitely not as bad as what these people are dealing with. And I used that comparison to avoid facing the truth about what I already knew. It wasn't that perspective that was keeping me stuck. It was fear. And I don't say this to make it about me, but to simply tell you that if someone who's been doing this work for over 30 years can fall into the same pattern, then there's no shame if you're stuck in it too. The question is, are you ready to get out of it? Here's what I've learned about this particular kind of fear. It usually comes in two forms, and they're both keeping you stuck. The first is the one we've been talking about, the fear that if you go all in, you do the coaching, you have the hard conversations, you are fully vulnerable, and the marriage still doesn't change. You've run out of road. No more excuses, no more place to go, no more hope to hold on to. And now you're faced with the toughest decision of your life. And so you stay stuck in the in-between. You're not fully in the marriage. You're not fully out of it. You're just stuck. And as painful as that is, it feels safer than the alternative. The second fear is that it might actually work because then something would be required of you. And, we don't talk about this one as much, but I see it just as often because real change in marriage requires something from both of you. We can't just point a finger at our spouse and not look at our own patterns, our own flaws, our own mistakes. If you want something to really change, you have to show up differently than the person you become comfortable being. That means total accountability, and that is not easy to do. A better marriage means no more hiding. It means showing up fully for something that maybe you've only been half invested in for a while. So both fears make total sense. And they're both going to keep you exactly where they are for as long as you let them. It makes me think of Ben and Claire, a couple I worked with years ago. For years, they struggled. And they kept talking about taking that first step. They'd have the conversation about having the conversation. What are we going to do for our marriage? And they'd read books and they'd get online and search for people in their area to help them. But something always stopped them from taking that first step. So when I met with Ben and Claire separately about the idea of working with me, they haven't signed on to work with me yet. Ben tells me, honestly, I'm afraid to know the truth. What if we do the work and we do all these things right? She still doesn't want to be with me. At least right now, I can tell myself we haven't tried. So there's still hope. But surprisingly, when Claire talks to me about the idea of doing therapy, she has a completely different answer. She's saying to me, I'm afraid it will work because then I have to give up the anger I feel. The anger is the only thing right now that I have to hold on to. And I don't know who I am if I let go of the anger. Do you see it? Two people, both stuck, both afraid. They're using their fear as a form of protection against something maybe they can't even fully put a name to. And here's the crazy thing. Ben and Claire didn't have a love problem, and they didn't even really have a communication problem. They had a courage problem. They were both afraid to take a risk. The risk of being really known, being disappointed, trying, making an effort, and it failing. The risk of finding out the truth because staying where we are is no longer acceptable to us. That kind of courage is available to you right now, today. The first thing you have to do is just acknowledge the fear. Which one is it? The fear of it failing or the fear of it succeeding? Once you're honest about that, you have to try to separate out the decision to do something, to be courageous, from the guarantee or the outcome. This idea that trying is only worth it if it works. But that's not how courage works. Courage isn't the absence of fear. You know that. Courage is the willingness to try to take the risk, to do something to move us from this stuck place, and it will be what it will be. But at least I'm doing something. That says something about who you are, and it gives your marriage a fighting chance. And then just take one small step forward, one concrete step. No more reading about it, no more researching about it, no more talking about it, but not doing anything. And if you don't know what that next step is, then that's what this next section is all about, because I've created a tool that will help you take that first concrete step. It's called the Marriage Diagnostic Roadmap. I designed it to help you identify when you don't know what's wrong, you don't know where to start, you don't know what the next step is. This is a comprehensive couples assessment that gives you and your spouse a clear, guided roadmap. Not a generic framework, not a general overview, a specific picture of exactly where your marriage is stuck and why, where to start, and how to begin changing it. Because here's the thing about fear. It thrives in uncertainty. And one of the fastest ways to dismantle its grip is to replace uncertainty with clarity. That's how you can begin to make a decision. You come from a place of information rather than anxiety. The Marriage Diagnostic is only $197, less than some single sessions will cost you. And it is going to give you far more information than months of trying to figure this out on your own. If you're ready to stop wondering and start knowing, then please click on the link in the description below.